stand in front, yeah.
I'm going to open the slide with that.
Okay, good morning, folks. It is 09:30 and it's about time to start. So today we have Michelle and Donna, and they're going to be talking about trends in senior living. So without further ado, ladies, you're on.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. We realize it's a little hard for us to hear up here. Is that going to work? Okay. So we're going to try to sit up here and just have a conversation with each of these slides. However, we'll see how this works. So this is session 3 of part 2 of How It Works. And we're going to talk about trends in senior living and then end with a little bit about what the future holds in senior living, at least from the conversations we're having with our peers across the nation. I'm going to ask Donna to stand up for a second, please.
All right, I'm getting my sweater on.
So this was not planned, but the picture was planned. So I think it's very funny that I came in today to tell her, oh, by the way, you should see the photo I put up there. And then I walk in her office and she's in red too. So we like to say great minds think alike. So we tend to shop at the same places too. So, all right, let's talk. I can't see this. I don't know if this is going to work. Yeah, I think we're going to have to do this. So here's what we're going to cover a little bit today. So we're going to talk a little bit about demographics. Now, this is going to be interesting because I can't wait to see some of your faces as we talk about you as a demographic, because these are the things that people are talking about in our field. There's a few slides on workforce and what specifically is happening in the workforce field in senior living. A little bit about the supply in this market, the growth trends, developments that are happening, healthcare and skilled nursing dynamics, because we know that that's a hot topic not only here at Beatitudes, but also in the community, and what some revenue diversification looks like in senior living. And then a little bit on technology, and then really going to talk about what the future holds, at least from, as I said, our colleagues and the conversations happening there. Good with that? We're just going to go play off of each other, too. So the first one, I'm going to let you take the demographic one.
So I think that the thing that is important when you start looking at demographics, let me back up just for a moment. Many of these things that you're going to be looking at today come either from Ziegler. They are a big banking firm, among other things, but they are in the not-for-profit senior living market, and so this is stuff that they keep very close track of because there's money in it. You'll also see some from Greystone Consulting, because Greystone is one of the consultants that is the consultant we're working with. You've heard us actually reference Greystone Consulting a few times, so pretty soon you'll start seeing some slides from them as well. Same reason, they work a lot in the both for-profit and not-for-profit senior living space, and so they have lots of good information. So with that as the backdrop, first let's just talk for a moment about this increase in population. You know, how many of you have heard the term silver tsunami? Silver tsunami, right. You may feel like you're living that silver tsunami, but...
We don't like that term. But.
Yes, but the reason that's an important thing and why people who do demographics are looking at it is because they want us to recognize that in the next, you can see kind of where the blue zone is. It's hard to talk about it when you're looking up there and I'm looking down here, but the blue is really where we're living right now, and you can see that the population is about 11.7 million of people who are at 75 plus. But look what's coming just in not very many years from now, in that 2039, 2040. That is when the youngest of the baby boomers turns 75. That's what starts the Zieglers and the Greystones and people in our industry. That's when we start raising our head up a little bit more, because we are expecting a tremendous amount of growth. We've already been experiencing it, but we are expecting a tremendous amount of growth in the next 10 to 15 years in the population that we serve.
Good job. And here's just a little bit more about many of you sitting in here. I find this pretty fascinating. So out of 7,300 baby boomers, 22% have no children, 37% have no grandchildren, and middle and high income boomers less likely to live with or near children. Does that resonate with anyone in this room? I'm trying not to make eye contacts with anyone specifically, but it's just interesting. We're starting to see this quite a bit. When you look at the other pieces around, 48 states, this one jumped out at me. 48 states are projected to have double-digit percentages increase in the number of those 65 plus with Alzheimer's and dementia between 2020 and 2025.
And I think what's important here and what we're watching with this is that these facts that are telling us there's a large percentage of the population that we will be serving, not necessarily today, but coming in the next 10 to 15 years, may or may not have necessarily that foundational support of children and grandchildren around them. And so the question becomes, what does that mean to a community like Beatitudes Campus? What are the things we need to be thinking about? I will say I think we're pretty forward thinking in the way that we have connected folks to community, and we recognize that sometimes we are your people, so to speak, your village, so to speak. I was talking about one of our team members the other day who had a recent loss in his family, and I said the interesting thing to me is I think that his Beatitudes Campus family is his family. And so we already see that in our workforce, but we also see that in a large number of the residents that we serve. And what these statistics tell us is that that is going to be a continuing trend, that we need to make sure that we know how to be the village wrapped around the people that we are serving.
Yeah, and it's not just about the bricks and mortar, right? It's about the programming, it's about the culture. And next week you'll hear a little bit more about the culture work we're doing here, but it's the culture that we build here in the campus and in our field that allows for that village to be served. All right, a little bit more on just income statistic. I want you to look at 2018 and then take a peek at 2033. What jumps out at you? High income grows quite a bit. It goes from 4.6 to 17.9. You also see that lower middle, or the lower, gets even lower. So the more people are moving into that middle market, the middle income market versus the low income. So there's a shift there. And there's some theories behind that, which is people's homes are now making them more wealthy. That's different than prior generations too. That plays into the business plan and kind of our future here in senior living.
The workforce challenges, this is not a surprise to you because we have been talking about workforce challenges for quite some time. The slide that you're seeing, the graph that you're seeing is asking questions. They asked a bunch of CFOs. How much agency utilization do you have in your care centers? And agency, remember, are those registry, those temporary workers that we have coming in. And the campus falls into this, that we occasionally have needed to use registry. Some of you remember a season where we had a whole lot of agency or registry use going on. But you'll notice that there's a lot of us that say, yeah, we have less usage than a year ago, but it's not zero. And that would be the true story of the campus as well. The pieces that are on the right-hand side are some of the ways that we have responded to that. Things like a significant focus from leadership. That's why culture is important. That's why why our team members feeling connected to the mission and connected to our community is really important, because that is one of the reasons they stay. Look at the next point though. Wage increases are important, and significant wage increases are what have been occurring across the market, and that has had implications to the campus as well. We're going to talk about skilled nursing here in a few minutes. One of the decision points for us making the change in our skilled nursing environment was exactly related to this, the wage pressure and the lack of availability of staffing. And so you see that one of the answers was skilled nursing downsizing for some of the organizations.
And a little bit of background here, one on registry. So when I started 24 years ago, we were using quite a bit of registry, and we did a lot of work, and for almost 15 years, we had 0 registry across campus. And when I say that, I mean, I'm talking clinical registry, so in the healthcare center or assisted living. Coming out of the pandemic, and some of you have heard me share this before, our field lost 200,000 clinicians just in the pandemic due to burnout. So then fast forward coming out of the pandemic, what happens is we're all fighting for a limited pool of staff. And so to be able to adjust wages in 21, the campus-wide did an average of a 13% increase in staff wages was the average, 13%, because we needed to stay relevant and we needed to make sure that we were attracting staff. So I think that's just some good background.
I think that this is a very interesting slide because we are in this connection between the baby boomers who will be turning the first 75, will be turning 75 in the next 10 years, aging out of the workforce just as our workforce is starting to shrink. And that is what they want. That's what this idea is here, that today when they're talking about caregiver support ratio, that second bullet point down, they're talking about how many paid caregivers. Right now we're at 6 to 1, so 6 paid caregivers to 1 older adult. But by 2030, we'll be down to 4 to 1. That makes us in the business very, very nervous because we have to ask ourselves the questions, who will care? And if we don't have the people to care, what are the implications to our business? What are the implications to where people live and receive services? I'll ask you to file that away because when we look at future trends, there's going to be some thinking around that. But the other side of the story, and they call it out here in a bold bullet point, is that it's the two sides, that we are anticipating a greater demand for our services, which, you know, since we like our jobs,
Job security.
that's helpful that we are anticipating that this is a model that will continue to serve older adults into the future. And there are going to be labor challenges that we need to continue to talk about and innovate around.
Perfect. And here's just kind of some of the headlines that have come out. I like this slide too because you see as we talk about workforce challenges, nursing school enrollment is down. Now we're starting to see that kind of tick up a little bit. The happiest workers are older than 65. See that? That's the very bottom left. That's the headline there. The happiest workers are those older than 65. So when we look at traditional methods around workforce and conversations we have with our directors is we have to change our mind about how we approach things. This needs to be in a partnership. I think you'll hear David and Cheryl when they're talking about culture. We're now living in a time and working in a time where our workforce is 5 generations. You think about what Robert might want in a workforce, but what someone who's 17 might want. And so for directors and managers to think about how we approach our work with our employees who come to work every day, we want to make this special, but we need to make it very personalized to them and to their market or to their generation.
There's also that point of, as long-term care staffing crisis worsens, immigrants can bridge the gaps. I had the opportunity to participate in an NPR radio interview back about a month ago about the impact of immigration on our workforce and on our future workforce. And truly, from my opinion, and you know, since I was on the radio, I got to say my opinion, that how important immigration is going to be and immigration reform is going to be as we continue to look forward into our workforce. We already have here on campus, and again, I don't know what David and Cheryl are sharing, here on campus, we have foreign-born workers from over 20 different countries. And so when we talk about the importance of immigration, it's important to the campus. And what's also important is us figuring out how do we support, how do we communicate, how do we have a culture that supports foreign-born workers coming to work for us. One of the things that we did about a year ago was we opened up our holidays to be what we call flex holidays, such that whatever holiday is important to you, we're not going to say that you only get Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's because that's not necessarily what's important to somebody who has moved here from another country. They may have something very different that's important to them, or they may have a different faith background, or they may just have a different thing that they celebrate in their family. So we are intentionally looking forward to what this immigration issue does for the campus.
Yeah, I think that's a great addition. Great addition. Okay, this is one of my nerd slides because I like this stuff. So I wanted to show you, this is just the whole spectrum of senior living, right? All the various ways, starting from life plan communities like the Beatitudes campus, going all the way down to active adult. And you can see on the right-hand side, that's the number of communities across the nation. And then the far right is what the not-for-profit section is. So when we talk about true life plan communities, 74% of them are not-for-profit. Some are faith-based, some are not. The rest are for-profit. Thank you, lost that word. Adult day is a mixture. It's 50-50 on what's for-profit and what's not for-profit. But you can see where not-for-profits lean into this work and where for-profits have come in and kind of taken over. So when you look at hospice agencies and you look at home health agencies, a large majority of those are for-profit entities. So I think it's just a nice little context. Anything you would add to that one? Or
I would like to just point out, I think it's an interesting thing that 33% of affordable housing organizations are not for profit, with the balance being for profit. And so I think we tend to think of affordable housing as being something that is mission based, whereas this would tell us that there's clearly a financial basis for it as well. I'm not making any prescriptives in that, just pointing out that I think that there's some interesting things as you think about, hospice is another really good example of that only 15% of hospice organizations, like you said, are not for profit. So I think those are interesting statistics for us to think about as we think about how mission drives the work that we do, and asking ourselves, there are some for-profit organizations that have figured out to do mission-based type work, but doing it in a profitable environment.
Way. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the hospice piece, because here, when we think about hospice here in the Phoenix metro area, what do we think of? Hospice of the Valley. Huge nonprofit here. So every market is going to look a little different. This is just senior living as a whole, or senior services as a whole. Okay, I'll take this one a little bit and then I'll let you add. So this I thought was interesting too, because as we look at developments, what you can see there in the gray is new properties being built. I was trying to see I was looking at it. No, I know, but I was trying to look at the little footnote there. And then the blue are those properties that are going, or that are just expanding. But look at the for-profits, how quickly they're both growing and building new, and look at the not-for-profits. That has to do with the banking side of things and how for-profits can enter the market in a quicker fashion, where not-for-profits have to go through tax-exempt bonds, we have to pre-sell. So the business model looks a little bit different, which is why for-profits tend to, they tend to build quick, sell quick, find new owners, and they bounce around a lot. They're not grounded in the mission work. What would you add to that? Anything? Okay. Thank you. You want to take this one?
I can.
Okay.
All right. So I think this is really just a different way of looking at the same story. That so the blue in this case at the lower end, at the bottom is not-for-profit, and the green is the for-profit business or sector. And you'll see that even through the Great Recession, where we started to slow down. Now, Beatitudes campus has a history of having really beautiful timing, in that we opened our Central Parks right in the midst of the Great Recession in 2008 and 9 is when we were in Phillip, and so that was interesting timing.
And then patio homes during a pandemic, so great timing.
Yes. So you see, and we're in a redevelopment process looking forward to the future during a time of incredible inflation in staff costs, labor, construction materials, and banking.
Yep.
And so let's just say that our timing is not always perfect, but we do seem to prevail in the end. But I would say that this tells the same story as what Michelle was talking about, is that the for-profits have continued to grow largely because of the availability of capital in the venture market and in the more traditional banking market as well.
And I would just point out that bottom square that says total not-for-profit inventory is in decline if you were to include freestanding skilled nursing properties. So in the for-profit, or I'm sorry, the not-for-profit. So in a sense, nonprofits are in a decline because of the number of nursing homes that are not-for-profit that are choosing to close. You see a majority of that in the rural areas. They can't find staff. Reimbursement rates are lower, and so we are in our field seeing more of the rural nursing homes closing, and so in that case, not-for-profits kind of size would be in decline. However, this is an interesting slide. So you saw how many for-profits there are out there, right, compared to not-for-profits. However, not-for-profits tend to run a higher occupancy on average. So why do you think that is? I didn't hear, I'm sorry. The customers are happier. We focus in on building community, right? So it's not just come and move in and have fun. No services, that's what you tend to find. Not all places are like that. I'm kind of generalizing. But in the not-for-profits, we tend to focus on community, which is why they credit our higher occupancy rates compared to the for-profits.
And I think the other important thing to note here is that for-profits do have those changes of ownership, and that does tend to suppress occupancy because folks moving in, if you don't know who's going to be at the helm a year from now or 2 years from now, there are some implications to that as well.
That's 2021. So you can see both of them start dropping. And that's when we saw a huge drop. You didn't really see it in 20. People were kind of staying put, but you started to see that decline in both for-profits and not-for-profits coming out of 20 and into 21. So yeah, both of those. That's fascinating, isn't it, when you look at that drop?
We didn't drop as fast. We didn't drop as far, and we came out faster. Is really the story that you should read there. You can see that it starts jumping much faster in the not-for-profit with a good now 3% difference between us.
This I wanted to just include. This is looking at all the faith-based not-for-profit life plan communities. So where I have highlighted, and I highlighted the wrong one, please look to the right. Clearly, I didn't have on my glasses this morning. But that's the number of United Church of Christ life plan communities. And I believe there's 7.
7.
Yes. Actually, if you were to look at that a year and a half ago, that was about 11 or 12. But there was a very large United Church of Christ organization who was grounded in affordable housing, but over the years had expanded their portfolio to have life plan communities. They decided to sell back off all of those life plan communities. So now they are just focused on affordable housing, so we lost that number there. What's interesting is this particular organization chose to sell it to for-profits. So I think they had 4 or 5 communities that, instead of doing a sponsorship change, decided to sell to the for-profits. And now they're just fully grounded in affordable housing. But you can just see, the largest number is Lutherans, I believe. And then, Donna's previous organization was a Baptist organization. And that's the one to the left of the falsely highlighted one. So I just think it's interesting when you see that. But again, not all life plan communities are faith-based. There are some that are just not-for-profit and don't have a sponsoring church.
This one is, again, goes to growth that Ziegler has been anticipating. And so they have 45 new communities that they are anticipating will open through 2028. But you can see that the difference between traditional, which means independent living all the way through skilled nursing. There's only 13 of the 45 that are planning to open in the next 3 years. 13 are including skilled nursing, but the majority are not. They are redefining the life plan continuum as being independent living, assisted living, and I would say memory care sits in there as well. But also what has been intriguing or interesting to us is that there are some communities that are now building standalone independent living. So stay tuned. Not sure what the implications are there.
Yeah, and this one was, I wanted to include this because I know we've had a lot of conversations that because of the pressures in skilled nursing, staffing, reimbursement rates, listening to consumers not wanting to live in assisted living, that whole modality is starting to have a huge shift. Now, you're not seeing that as much in the for-profit world. There are still a lot of people going right into skilled nursing businesses and building freestanding nursing homes. But in our world, this is the trend and kind of a rebalance of what a continuum looks like. And there's more of that further on too. And then this one we just wanted to show. This is, Ziegler does a ranking of some of the largest life plan communities. So these are all single sites across the nation, and I highlighted the right one on this one. Beatitudes Campus is number 16 of the largest communities. Now, it's probably really small, but the number one is Shell Point, which is in Fort Myers, Florida. They have 1,800 units. 1,800 units. They're big. They're a powerhouse. They're actually very pretty too. They have their own television station.
Well,
and
there
newscast.
are some people who lived in a town smaller than that growing up. Agreed? Yeah, some of you.
Me.
Yeah, so that must feel like a big city to some folks.
Okay, you want to talk skilled a little bit?
So let's talk about skilled nursing. This is not news to you if you have been around long enough since about April of this year, when we made a decision to stop doing skilled rehab in our care center. We did not close our care center, but we now only do long-term care. This is very consistent with what we have seen in our brethren across the country. Interestingly, skilled nursing, this was an interesting number to me, that occupancy does continue to rise, but they say the denominator has shrunk. Now, why is that important? That's the overall number of beds that are available in skilled nursing. And so we're seeing a little bit of a closure between the number of beds available and the number of people who still do require some level of skilled nursing. Now, in this case, they are not differentiating between a short-term rehab stay and long-term custodial care, as we call it in the licensing. So that's an important thing we keep an eye on it. But I do think the next one is really important. Nearly 600 nursing homes closed during the pandemic. In my prior organization, we actually were one of those. I closed, I was part of closing down our little 52-bed standalone skilled nursing building that was out in Surprise. Now, we had a much larger skilled nursing on our other community, and it just didn't make sense to have two that were about 50% full. It made more sense to consolidate down into one, but we were among those statistics. And I think the other one that I would ask you to look at is that 48% of not-for-profits have downsized. So this is definitely a not-for-profit trend, more so than a for-profit trend.
And I would say also a trend within life plan communities, and maybe not as much in freestanding not-for-profit skilled nursings. And then I would call your attention to the last two bullet points. Multiple headwinds, which you've heard us talk about. Staffing, reimbursements, a staffing mandate that's supposedly will be coming out from CMS, already has come out. We'll see if it goes into place. But then customer and consumer preferences. So that last bullet point then leads us to how do we reimagine, right? We all have kind of grown up in this field, and you have lived here or chose the campus because you knew that we had a place. But what if the place isn't that particular building anymore? So in our field, we're talking about what does it look like in the future? How can you still provide those services, but bring them into the environment that you want to be in, not that you have to leave your environment. So that's a lot of the conversation about what is skilled nursing going to look like moving forward.
There's been a diversification, and this is a little bit more of what Michelle is talking about, that we are continuing to see this growing group of what we call home and community-based services. So that's exactly what it sounds like. What are the services that can come to our home, come to our community, and that you can take advantage of, never having to leave home? I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about the fact that she no longer goes shopping, that everything just comes to her home. Now, for my pocketbook, that's not necessarily good, because I can be sitting at 10 o'clock at night and have on a whim decide I need something, and click, it's there the next morning at 8. That's not necessarily a great thing. However, it's a great thing, right? I didn't have to leave my home. I didn't have to spend the gas. I didn't have to file it away later to go shop and be out and about to get that thing. Well, that's the same of our home and community-based services as well. Many, many, many things can now be brought right into our home. And you're already seeing it here at our community. I'm proud of the good work that our team is doing in bringing Kirana to the campus, and they'll come into your home to provide that care, or you can go to them. Many of our other types of providers will now come into your home. If you need rehab services and you're able to do it in the comfort of your home, I would say all of us like that better anyway. Those rehab services can come to you via home health and our partnerships that we have here on the campus. What this is telling us is that we've kind of got the traditional, but lots of other things are coming where it makes it very possible to receive the services just in time when you need them in a place that you choose to receive them.
And then I would add, if you look at that bottom box, those are other business lines. So these are organizations like us have decided to lean into something. Maybe if we're trying to turn around occupancy here, where are other ways that we can build revenue for the campus? So we have colleagues out there that have started pharmacy services. There are colleagues out there that are doing consulting and advisory. We've done some kind of one-off ones. Primary care management services, just it'd be like Donna and I saying, okay, we're going to go and help organization XYZ. We're just going to manage them. So finding ways from boards and for a leadership team, where are other lines of revenue as you're trying to get to a thing? So these are kind of the part of the business model. There's some even doing technology, which is an interesting lead-in.
And you know that we continue to pursue beautiful technology solutions here. You know, there are things that we have limitations because our buildings are older, but we've also found ways to bring that technology into your home. Nina and I were visiting about the care center yesterday that we are test driving technology that is passive technology that sits in the room, but it detects things like changes in a resident's gait. It will tell us when somebody falls, or how frequently are they getting up to go to the restroom, or how frequently are they in need of assistance. And all of that data is being filtered in, and in this particular case, it's Kirana that is pioneering that into our building to test drive it. We're not doing it in secret. When it's going in, we will tell the residents about it, but it's passive and it's not videoing, it's just gathering alternative intelligence or artificial intelligence about the person living in that space. If you've watched too many movies, it can be a little bit creepy, but at the same time, I think those technology solutions are going to be part of the way that we deploy care and services into the future. You heard us talk about workforce challenges.
Exactly.
Technology is one of the solutions for that. We, at our most recent Leading Age conference, there were little robots rolling around the expo hall delivering coffee and food and all manner of things, or taking your dishes from you. It was just a little robot that was meandering around, and it would run up to a person and it would stop, so it would know not to run over the person. It was pretty amazing.
It was a little creepy though,
It
when
was
you didn't
creepy.
know it was behind you and you turned around and all of a sudden it's right there on you. But it does help. I'm glad you touched on the workforce solution. So knowing that we have challenges, how are ways that we can provide better care with fewer bodies? And so a lot of the technology work is around the care delivery, but it's also in things of other workforce solutions. You know, how many of you had time clocks and you went and punched punch your time clock. We don't have that anymore. I mean, we've got different systems now. There are apps that we communicate out to our staff on an app. So what are the various ways that we can be more effective and efficient, even on the staffing side? I think, anything more on this one? Okay. This is just an example of just some of the newer, not all technology, but some technology that's hitting our field. And Ziegler actually has something called the Linkage Fund that organizations can donate into, and it spurs new innovation and technology in our field. You will see Karana up there. Karana was funded and started, they are specific to this field. So they were funded and started by this Linkage Fund, and probably the work that the technology work coming out of there came from this. But these are just all the different technologies out there. Some are care and delivery, some are workforce solutions, some are just home monitoring systems, but ways that we can do a better job caring for each of you while also being effective and efficient. All right, who's ready to talk about the future? So, do you want me to take this one, or okay, I'll do this one. So this one, just for us, as we start thinking that this is a slide we share with the board too, when we're planning for the future, right? So short term is 1 to 2 years. What are the things that we need to do to get from A to C, we'll say? Midterm planning is 3 to 5 years, so that's then going from C to M. I don't know, I'm making stuff up while I'm up here. And then long-term planning is 6 years plus. So at a board level, and you heard me talk about governance a couple of weeks ago, it's all strategy. They don't get involved in the operations. Remember the whole saying about eyes up, hands off. They're looking forward. So where do we want to go from here? Where do we need to be in 2 years? Where do we need to be in 5 years? Where do we need to be in 10 years? And what are the steps they're taking? So a lot of conversation, especially coming out of the pandemic, when we're all still in recovery mode. Believe it or not, even 4 years later, we're still in recovery mode. The field is, and a lot of businesses are. But what do we do in the short term, midterm, and long term? I'll let you take this one a bit.
We've talked a little bit about this, and so we won't spend a ton of time on it, but this is, again, just a different look at all of the pieces that come as a part of being comprehensive service model for senior living. And there are a lot of things. You see the residential piece there. Well, this is something that I would say is more of kind of the foundation of, at least here at the campus, what we have done. But we have colleagues that are out in the business that have no community. They call it a community without walls. And so there's no bricks and mortar. You know, if you're trying to figure out how to keep our 60-year-old buildings functioning, some days no bricks and mortar sounds pretty nice. But the thing that is foundational to the campus is residential. So that is a piece that's very important. It's important to our board that we continue to focus and figure out how do we continue to be in that space. But look at the right hand, I think it's on the right. Yes, right hand side for you. Didn't know if it was different up there. There are all of those services, again, that we've talked about. And remember back when we were looking at the slide of what the past has been, not-for-profits have not necessarily been as big in these more alternative spaces, so to speak, but there is growth coming, and Ziegler at least is predicting that there's going to be a lot more partnerships in driving all of those good services on the right-hand side.
And I think that's the key, where you talk about first our places, and then services. That's the difference. And you're starting to see this shift of not everything has to be in a place. We can find the services to bring to you. Your turn. Okay, so here's a little bit about just what seniors are looking for now and what they consider in values. And as I talk about this, I'm looking at Melissa in the back and several of you who are doing things around the blue zone. There is a huge focus on wellness. And so I love this. The second bullet talks about wellness plus health is wealth, but notice it's spelled WELLTH. So it's all about the wealth span and how well you want to live. And you're looking for, and again, I feel silly saying like I'm talking about each one of you, but the data is telling us that you want a place that you're focused on your health, not just activities. Right? When I first started in this field, it was all about the activities. How busy can we keep them? Now it's about how long you want to live and how well you want to live with high quality.
I'm just saying I would sign up to live in a wellness resort.
Same.
Where there's massages and cushy spa treatments.
That's on the list. Don't worry. It's on the list.
So again, same theme is that this coming trend in organizations like us is branded wellness programs. And so this is probably someplace where we dream a little bit about this because the campus does have a heart for innovation, and we have been a leader in the field in creating new systems or processes or ways of doing things. Think about Comfort Matters. When Comfort Matters started, it was revolutionary in the world of how do we provide memory support in a way that focuses in on comfort. Well, we also know that wellness is a big deal, and we think that we are the right people, the smart people. We've got the right community around us to figure out how to do it well and brand it.
Yep, agreed. Just like Success Matters too, and building on that. And there are communities out there right now that have a whole wellness, I would say a buy-up plan. So if you wanted this whole buffet of wellness services in addition, that's something that you can purchase. And maybe it's you're working out with a personal trainer 5 days a week or whatever that looks like. That's just an up and coming thing happening in our field. And aging in place.
We've talked about aging in place, so we won't camp here for very long. And you're going to want to go back, I think, when we put the slides up and go back and read through some of these points, because there's a lot here, and I know we want to leave time for questions and discussion. But this idea of being able to age in place, how can I live well in the place that I choose to call home? I feel a little bit like in these trends we're preaching to the choir here, but that is let's just say you're trendsetters. That certainly that is a coming trend, and it's a growing trend of I want you to bring the things to me that allow me to live in the place that I choose to call home.
One little piece I would add is one of the things we learned during the pandemic is the effect of isolation on people and their health, right? So aging in place, it used to be meaning I'm going to stay in my home and age in place. When we're talking about it in this piece, we're talking about aging in place in our community. Whether, you move into your patio home or you move into your Central Park or your North or South building, and that's where you stay for the rest of your life, and we bring services to you. That is a shift. Staying at home will always be our largest competitor. Always. Because senior living only touches about 10% of age and income qualified seniors. Only 10% will ever move into a community like this. So staying at home will always be our biggest competitor. So it's about what are you creating on your community that makes you stand out? And how do we bring exactly what your generation is looking for to the table to make you want to live here for life?
This one is important to us as we think about forward-looking, and this is from Greystone and Ziegler in this particular case, but we always ask ourselves, what's the consumer thinking? To Michelle's point, our biggest competitor is I can just stay at home, but we need to have an eye toward what are the things that will attract people and what are the concerns of the people who would come to live in a community like ours. So, for example, understanding the need for increases in monthly service fees. I don't think any of us are naive enough to think in an inflationary environment like we have experienced that everything is going to stay status quo. So it's good for us to be able to see that we serve smart people who understand that there may have to be an increase. I think the acceptance of assisted living and memory support as the full continuum, recognizing that we can serve all of the needs inside of those licensed areas. I don't know that that's prescriptive to the campus. I think largely the industry is saying we think we can do what we need in the context of independent living, assisted, and memory support.
And then the other piece is around entrance fee plans with lower monthly service fees. Again, that goes to how long will my money last? Like you might have a home that is $500,000, but your assets might, or your monthly income might be lower. So what we're finding is people want a lower monthly service fee while they can pay a higher entrance fee price. And then we talked a little bit about aging at home. All right, anyone disagree with what's up on the screen? Because we're talking about you again. You want choice, a focus on wellness. Many of you have financial planners that are involved, and so our sales team hears that quite a bit. It's just a more educated consumer now, which is great. And then, how many of you have a cell phone in your purse or your pocket right now? Yeah, I should have a cell phone. I should have asked it the other way, but I mean, digital has become your world too. Now, your grandchildren, your grandchild, Rose, my niece and nephew, they don't know a world without digital thing, but this is a huge shift. And I will tell you, being in this field for almost 30 years, COVID sped that up. I remember hearing the first time a group of you were going to try to have a meeting on Zoom. You know, it was a new thing for you, but now it's normal, everyday practice, just like it is for us. Okay, wasn't sure.
This is directly from Greystone, and I think that it is an important thing as we think about what does the future look like. Again, nothing that is surprising to you here, but service-rich environment, choice-filled. And you saw the choice thing on the note on the slide previously. The ability to choose what you need when you need it is becoming more and more of a thing. And so what does that mean to the campus? It means that we are asking ourselves, how do we bundle or unbundle services? What are the things that people are willing to pay for and not willing to pay for? And Michelle mentioned wellness programs, and more like the deluxe wellness program. Is that an unbundled product as opposed to saying everybody needs that and everybody's going to pay for it? Is that more of an unbundled product that people who choose to buy it can buy it, people who don't? That's that choice that we think is going to become even more prevalent. We know that boomers, that's important to them.
And also just being self-directed. That's a huge change too. I'm trying to think how to best explain this. I tell staff often that we don't care for people, we care with people. Because so much of our field was all about caring for you. That's not to say, but it's changed, and it's not to say we don't care anymore. It's about you want us to meet you where you are, versus, hi, welcome to Beatitudes Campus, and this is your structure. Right? This is more about how do we structure ourselves, the classes we offer, the meals we serve. How does that appeal to a broader one that allows you to make those decisions for yourself versus us telling you what to do? That's a self-directed piece. We left about 10 minutes, so we tried. Was that helpful to someone? Okay, good. Good. Steve.
What percentage of our workforce are immigrants, and is that changed, and do you anticipate it changed, bearing in mind that what happens in Washington may have a bearing on that?
I don't know the breakdown, but we can ask Cheryl to bring that for you next week, because I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm concerned about what that looks like, because you heard about the staffing challenges the field's already having. There are certain, and you've heard me talk about this before too, unfortunately, society doesn't find this very sexy work. I think it's very sexy. I love this field. I've spent 30 years in this field. But there's not a whole line of people wanting to come and work in senior living. So immigration will play a huge part, which is also why Leading Age at a national level is doing a whole campaign around appealing to the workforce about how special this work is, but also, and hopefully this will continue under a new administration, really focused in on the importance of immigration and the work that's going to be needed. So we'll get you some specifics for next week.
I'm just wondering where Success Matters stands in all of this. We had some good support from those two ladies that left, and we still feel a vacancy that they have left.
Agreed. And we, two things have sort of impacted. One is just that we have not received a ton of resumes, but honestly, the bigger issue has been just the capacity of those of us on the leadership team through this season to make sure that we've done the right interviews and the conversations and looked at all of the folks. That isn't to suggest that we haven't interviewed yet, but we are gathering resumes right now. We've also been spending quite a bit of time asking ourselves, how do we best structure that whole support mechanism? Because I think I've said this a couple of times. The amount of responsibility and services that our previous team was carrying was not sustainable for two individuals. And so we've had to ask ourselves, how do we restructure that in a smarter way to make sure that we don't overwhelm somebody who comes, and honestly allowing them to live up to their highest and best purpose. The stories I could tell you would tell me, you would go, oh yeah, it didn't really take an occupational therapist to run the errand to the pharmacy. Appreciate that she could do that for somebody and was willing to do that, but was that the best and highest use? And so we have looked at systems and processes. If you've hung around me at all, you know that that is a big portion of what I see my role is to say, if the system and process is not working well for us, it's time for us to ask ourselves, what do we need to change? And so we've spent a lot of time, and so I know you are anxious to get the Success Matters position filled. We are too, but we want to do it well, and we want to do it in a way that the person who comes into that role can be successful.
Yeah, I would say setting them up for success too within Success Matters, and then how do we bring our partners to the table? So the team itself, and we experienced this under the two prior to the two who just left, that they were trying to do everything. And so how do we bring in our partners to help supplement that so they're more directing versus doing?
I'd suggest that one of the areas that we could look at would be to have a licensed social worker or two involved somewhere in the Success Matters, whether that's a consultant or not. But those are people who are good at dealing with the whole person.
We're smirking and smiling because, yes, we agree with that too. And that's one of the things we're looking at.
And I think they would add something in terms of community liaison too, because that's the heartbeat of their work.
Yes.
So I think social worker would.
And they come to the table with connections to services.
That's right.
That's exactly the conversation we're having.
And I think, thank you, Debbie. I think looking forward into when we talk about these trends for the future, that is an important thing for us to be asking. We are asking ourselves, what is our future consumer? Certainly we want to know what does our current community need, because we never want to just always have an eye on the future, but asking ourselves, what are those things that we need to set ourselves up? Because again, I'll call you back to one of the things that we saw that are coming, a very large percentage of the folks who will be coming to live in our community are coming without family. Without immediate family support. And so when you're talking about social workers or community liaisons, people who can connect, financial support, those, because you also saw the income change, right? That we certainly are seeing a growth in the upper end of the income, but we are seeing huge growth in the middle part of the income. What are the implications to that? And what are the questions we should be asking? And so, well, I never want you to think that we're ignoring a need of the current. We have to do it with an eye toward today and into the future. What are those things that are going to set us, the campus, and by extension, our residents up for success? Because that is what is important to us. We want you to successfully live, but not just live, thrive in this beautiful environment, and it may be that we need different services.
Yeah.
I think we have here, then Jim.
Looking toward the future, how do you decide
when the consumer wants new health services, better maybe exercise services, dining services, things like pickleball courts, how do you decide income-wise whether it's best to expand all of that or build new?
I would say that much of the way that we know these things is we listen to people who are really smart, who study and can extrapolate lots and lots and lots of data. And then, I mean, from that standpoint, we've got this huge body of knowledge out there, so we don't have to be the smartest kids in the room. We just need to be smart enough to look at the data and translate it into our culture.
And I would say, you know, how much of that is trends? So talking about the pickleball and the wellness, how much of that is current trends? But then what are the true needs and what are the costs of those? So it really is, sometimes it feels like a crystal ball, but sometimes it's a lot of data in a spreadsheet to say, okay, if we wanted to get to X in 10 years, these are the incremental steps we need to take, and we need to start at this one, and maybe it is services. And so then that drives occupancy. Then occupancy gets you to, you know, a bond funding. So, I mean, it's just those incremental steps and to see what's the short-term wins and the longer-term wins. Jim.
Can you address the current thinking on what the construction plans are?
So redevelopment is still on the horizon, but we need interest rates to settle a little bit more, come back down. I don't think they're going to come back down to where they were when they started increasing, and we need construction costs to level out. The good thing is those have, because that's all the math equations that we can make sure we can afford the redevelopment. So we need to increase occupancy. So what the board has me working on now, and Donna and I working on now, is increasing occupancy. That's the thing we can control, while society and costs out in society settles down. Once that is there and we've got the occupancy and we know we can go to the bond funding, we would move forward with that. But it's a lot of work through there right now. So it's still on the table. It's just we got to get there, and we can only do that through occupancy that we can control and then wait for interest rates to continue to be cut, which I'm hoping they will.
How much do we collaborate with Duet? It seems to me that Duet is a possible feeder organization for us, that people, and that we can use Duet to pilot some of the ideas about bringing services to people where they are, and sort of see how some of those ideas work out. I tell you one thing I know that does not work out, and that is the introduction of electronic medical records into medical practice.
You sound like you're speaking from experience.
Has been devastating.
That's the reason why my dad retired. Once they told him he had to go to electronic medical records, he was like, I'm out.
That's right. And so there are changes that work out and changes that don't work out. But you have to ask, who's benefiting from the changes?
Yeah. So let me answer your Duet question really quick. So we do have a partnership. They're a sister organization, but they are the ones serving that 90%. If you think about it, they're the ones that are serving residents or clients who might never step foot in this. We do get some people who do decide because of our kind of sisterhood, but they're really focused on serving seniors in their home. I do believe if we start services that we're bringing to you, and if we want to look at expanding those, that would be a natural fit for us. But right now, they have their clients that want to stay in the home. We have all of you that we want to serve. Does that answer your question, Beth? Okay. Hopefully you all found this very helpful. We'd love to continue the conversation. You can tell that we love this stuff. So thank you guys very much for being here.